Research. I have the fun title of Vice President of Youth Insights at CNR Research. So I live and breathe the world of youth and families all day long. We are a custom research firm, and I'm going to talk to you about the world in which I live today, which is mostly in the syndicated space. And I'm going to take on the ambitious task of, in 15 minutes, explaining to you what parents want from us. So we're going to be, I'm going to give you, hopefully, some information and some numbers that will be useful. I'm happy to share this afterwards, so please don't feel the need to kind of furiously scribble down these numbers. But hopefully we'll also leave you with just a little bit of insight and a few different ways of thinking about parents, just one of your important constituencies when you think about apps, which is what we'll talk about specifically today. So the data that I'm going to share with you comes from our two syndicated studies that kind of live under the YouthBeat umbrella. The first one we call YouthBeat Junior. This is a survey of parents of 2 to 5-year-olds asking about their needs for their children, their desires, their interests, but also asking them to speak for their children. We do a lot of things at CNR, but we don't do quantitative surveys among 2-year-olds right now, so not very productive. We've also had another offering that's been in the marketplace for a few years now called YouthBeat. This is actually a study of kids, tweens, and teens defined the way I have up there, basically elementary school, middle school, and high school. Because I'm talking about parents today, I'm going to focus on kids and tweens and also bring in our preschool data. If anyone is interested in teen data related to apps, I'm more than happy to talk to you afterwards. What I will also say is that these studies are not digital specific. We do have digital modules and digital focus, technology focus in each of these studies, but these are actually attempting to be a full lifestyle study, really looking at how parents see their children and how children see themselves in terms of attitudes, behaviors, the way they live their everyday lives. And for perspective, this is just US focused, so you've gotten a great primer in the international marketplace. I'm going to be focusing today on the US, and all the data that you're seeing today is nationally representative to the population of online families in the US, so keep that in mind in terms of your base. So I think if you take away one thing from a conference like this today, we're all going to be focused on things like the business behind technology, the business behind apps. But I think one thing I'd love to leave you with, if you take nothing else away from this presentation, is when we're talking to parents, when we're talking to them about their children, they actually don't see their children like this. They see their children like this. So they are outside of the screen. They are living their lives, and technology is just a part of it. And what I will say is, when we talk about parents in this study, I'm going to be talking about parents of children of these age groups, regardless of parent age. But we've been doing a lot of work recently with this, I kind of cringe to say it because we've all been talking about it so much, but these millennial moms, this kind of new cohort of moms who are coming up who have been digital natives, their whole lives. And we might suggest that they are even more attuned to technology, they're more interested in technology, they see their children as part of this digital world in a different way than parents of the past, but actually when we talk to them, they see their children much more like this. Digital is just a part of what they do and how they live, and it's a tool for them, but this is how they see their children, so keep that in mind. Of course, most youth today in these age groups have access to apps, and we've actually, if you've seen any of our other presentations, we take a pretty conservative view of these numbers when we present them. We're lucky to not be in the business of having to kind of convince all of you that this is an important space, you know that. So we're always trying to kind of present the world as it really is, and in the past we've sometimes suggested that the numbers related to device ownership, app usage may be inflated, overinflated just a tad bit. But it is clear that the majority of preschoolers, kids, and tweens have access to apps on some device in their everyday lives these days. By the way, for kids and tweens, we ask them how much time in their day they tend to spend using apps, and it's just over a half hour. which might sound like a small number compared to some of the big numbers that we sometimes kind of throw around about screen time and usage. But actually, that ranks in our survey alongside the amount of time that they typically spend playing sports or playing outside. This is a huge part of their day. And remember, this is just one screen that we're talking about, one kind of action that we're talking about in the digital space. So it is clearly something that is part of their everyday lives in a significant way. When we talk about parents, we might say, you know, why are we even paying attention to parents? Isn't it all about the kids? And we'll kind of get to that. But we do know that parents are in the game in a number of different ways. So first of all, they often download to their own devices. So that's cell phones up there, or tablets up there, and cell phones down there. So we know that some of these apps, particularly among tweens, are downloaded on devices they own on their own. But it's much more likely that it's being downloaded on a device that belongs to a parent. Just to give you some U.S. perspective, so we actually, among tweens, only about 18% of tweens in the U.S., based to the whole population, own their own tablet or iPad. So even among tweens, it's still a fairly small number. Most of kids who have access to these app-enabled devices are really using parent devices. We also know that parents aren't always willing to pay, so this won't be any surprise to any of you in the room, that when we ask them how much they typically pay for apps, by and large, the apps that they have downloaded on their own devices tend to be apps that are free. And actually, when we look at, we do ask kids and tweens, not preschoolers, but we ask kids and tweens about downloading on their own, and not surprisingly, even more of them download free apps. Even when they do spend money, they tend to spend a small amount. And you can see the parent average and the youth average. Parents tend to spend just a slightly bit more than youth when they're shelling out their own money for apps. So what does this say to us? It doesn't say that they don't value apps. We certainly know that they do. But that it's one of the things we have to keep in mind is, what do they really value and what are they willing to pay for? And even when they're not paying, what's something that's going to intrigue them enough to spend that space on their own devices to download one of these apps? So that's the big question that we're going to attempt to answer in probably about 10 minutes now. What do parents really want? So first, this is really obvious, right? Don't disappoint them. That's in a way right now, that's kind of the most important perspective to bring to the app space when we think about parents. So I recycle, for any of you who've been at Digital Kids before, I'm recycling this from a couple of years ago, a Digital Kids presentation, but it's something that we think is still really true. Certainly, we're talking about apps today, but when parents think about technology, they don't put it all in one bucket. It's impossible for them to do that. They have different relationships to different technologies, and particularly related to apps. So TV is still that kind of familiar foe. I love it. I probably watched a lot of it as a kid. I don't want to admit that to my own kids, but I watched a little bit more than I confess to them. But I have perspective on TV. You know, I know what good TV is. I know what bad TV is. It's easy for me to kind of navigate this ground. So it is a foe to some parents, but it's a very familiar foe. It's something that they can navigate. The internet, especially for this generation of kind of millennial parents, this first cohort coming into the parenting space right now, the internet's still a mixed bag. You know, we don't have to talk to parents. We don't even have to talk about the idea that there's lots of positives about being online for kids, but they also know that there are negatives. So they kind of are also continuing to negotiate this space. They have mixed feelings about their children being online in general. But when we talk about apps, and this is about 2 years ago, I think, when we first presented this, they're still in the honeymoon phase. So no matter how you feel about your child in screen time, you see your 2-year-old navigating that iPad, it's pretty cool. You see them opening up your cell phone, and maybe you cringe for a moment when you realize they've just emailed somebody that they shouldn't be emailing, but it's still pretty cool. And that's how we think about about apps and parents, that no matter what kind of hang-ups, what perspective and lens parents bring on apps, which is just a reflection of their overall parenting perspective, still, when they think about apps, they're kind of in the honeymoon phase. But there are some things that really frustrate them, and these will be no surprise to any of you today, right? So The upgrading cost after downloading a free app, this is number one, and we're going to talk about this. This might seem like a really practical thing. It is about their wallet to some degree. It is about these horror stories of getting that bill that you didn't expect, but it's also about independence, which we're going to talk about in a moment. But it's the idea that my child is playing on this, and for whatever reason they're on this, whether it's because they love it, because I need them to be occupied for a moment, we're in a restaurant and this is the way to get a few moments of peace. From a parent's perspective, as soon as one of these pop-ups come up, it's an intrusion. And this is kind of the kiss of death for apps. Even a free app, you don't get any credit for being free the first time if you're charging them later. The second one, what's a good app? And this is a really big problem for parents. When we ask preschool parents how they find out about apps, most of them still say that they find out by kind of searching on the store. They'll put in search terms like preschool apps, but oftentimes they are just kind of hoping that they're going to get some good recommendations that they can follow up, do some research on, but this is really a challenge for them. There is, again, even if you're a free app, you are very invaluable to a parent if they've downloaded you and the child is not having fun or they don't think that you're worthwhile. And the cost to download, just kind of generally speaking. So cost, and when we think about value, we're thinking about cost as kind of a primary reason, but cost is kind of a lens on a lot of other things when we think about apps. So number two, promote play. Again, not terribly surprising to any of you in this room that when it comes to apps, play is really important. I hate to say this because I know many of you have sat through yesterday a whole day of educational apps, and we love educational apps. So, but what I will say is when you talk to parents, parents will say that the reason they love apps for their kids and the apps that they are that what matters most to them about apps is education. So I'm going to hold questions just to the end, so I have 15 minutes. But so when we ask them what really matters to them, it is about education, and fun for the child seems secondary, but then we ask them what they actually download. And this is what they download. And I know, you know, that games and education cannot be considered mutually exclusive items. That games and play are about learning, are about teaching. Most of these games, parents will say in some way are educating their child, but when given the choice, and this is what they're looking at on a survey, games and education, they say they mostly download games. And that's for all three age groups, slightly higher or slightly more alignment between games and education in the preschool space, which isn't surprising. Again, this is not to say that we shouldn't be focused on educational apps. I have a master's in education. I really believe in it. I'm with you. But just know that when parents say, I'm really interested in educational content, that it's complicated and that play and entertainment are really important to her and him as well. When we talk about education and we talk about play and we talk about the apps that parents really love, recognize that there's more than one model. There's more than one way to satisfy mom's and dad's need. Just thinking about the preschool space, we see apps like Toddler Taxonomist, kind of traditional entertainment, but if you are a traditional educational app, you go to this app and you, this is done by Game Aid, by the way, so this is a free app and it's a nonprofit, when you go to this app, you can see that kids are getting kind of a traditional type of gameplay out of this. They're identifying animals. There's a lot of voiceover. It looks like a lot of words here, but I promise there's an algorithm that makes it very fun and very achievement oriented for kids. Parents can look at this, and this is pretty obvious, right? If your 3 or 4-year-old is playing this game and they're learning these great complicated animal names, you're learning alongside them, by the way, because I don't know if any of you knew this animal name before you saw the name down there. But this is really kind of classic parent entertainment in app format. Also, and I know you're here, but I was actually exposed to Duck Duck Moose at a Digital Kids Conference. This is a favorite in my household. But Peekazoo, another really great take on education. And years ago, when we used to talk about parents in kind of TV research about education, they would say, it's about reading readiness, or it's about numbers, or it's about math. But this, which is very much social emotional intelligence, I think done in an excellent way. And I won't say too much because you should just download it, especially since they're in the room, right? But this of a Pikachu is a great kind of take on education done in a totally different way than Toddler Taxonomist. Different kinds of animals too. And then even something like Fireman Sam, so a character, right? So, a character that kids love. This isn't particularly kind of an educational app, but when we talk to parents about apps like this, they say, hey, it's community helpers. It's gameplay. I'm watching my child learn how to navigate these more kind of complicated movements on a pad. This is education. So just keep in mind that when parents are saying these things, there's lots of different models. Characters they love, classic education and entertainment. There's a wide range of kind of avenues into the heart of parents when it comes to apps. Understand them as parents. Of course, when we think about app, and I'm going to pull all these up, when we think about preschoolers, kids, and tweens, again, align what you're doing with apps and how you talk to parents about apps with what really matters to them. Now, when we look at preschoolers, we do see a lot of kind of school readiness, and so that is a much more important category for preschool parents than it is for the parents of kids and tweens. The need to feel loved, and good luck trying to tackle that in an app, right? But we also know that helping your child feel loved is also about recognizing the things that kids are really passionate about and helping parents share in that experience with them. So just keep in mind these kind of big picture goals that parents have for their kids. And also, if you take away one thing from this, it's that they do change with age. So, sometimes we apply this kind of lens of education or this lens of productive play to parents of all different ages, but it changes just the way kids do. And as many of you who are parents know, any great parent is also very responsive to their child. And that applies in the real world, and it also applies in terms of apps. And finally, understand their kids. So there's no greater service you can do, especially to a parent of a kid or a tween, than to really understand what their child finds fascinating, intriguing, inspiring, engaging about apps, and helping deliver that. Parents still respond to the smile on their child's face as much as they do their own kind of goals and objectives for their child, especially as they get older. So these are just the favorite apps of this age group. Interestingly, Angry Birds, still the favorite app when parents say, what's the favorite app for a preschooler? And this data, by the way, is from January to June 2013. So lest you think this is old data, because most of these titles have been around for quite a while, know that first and foremost, that a lot of these kind of playful apps are still at the top of the list for preschoolers, kids, and tweens. But also this list has not changed all that much in the past couple of years, despite all the great work that's being done. So also keep in mind, it's hard to break through with kids. It might even be a little bit easier to break through with parents. So keep in mind that the bar is high for kids, and you really need to understand what they're thinking about in order to satisfy parents in the app space. So just a couple of final things. Help them make their kids independent. This cohort of parents values children who are independent. This is seen as kind of a good thing. This is a value that they're trying to instill in their children. And technology is a great way to help kids be independent as long as they don't have these intrusions in the way. Make pricing transparent. So we'll probably hear a lot about that today, but from a parent's perspective, this is really number one. I mean, this is really critical to them. If you have great value, feel free to charge them a price for it. Our charts earlier in the slides or in the presentation don't suggest that you can't charge, that parents aren't willing to pay for anything, because they certainly are, but make that pricing transparent. Help her discover you, and I should say him too. We do a lot of work with dads, so that's just a typo. Help her or him discover you when he or she is not looking. So importantly, parents still struggle with finding out what is a great app. So don't discount the marketing side, the marketing function of your app business. It's really, really important. And it's a service to her. It's not a hindrance. And to him. And help both parents and kids have fun. So a lot of the app experiences that parents rave about when we talk to them are those ones that are kind of fun for both of them to engage in. So think about that Toddler Taxonomist app. That's a lot of fun for parents and kids. They're both learning together, and we think that this generation of parents, they continue to tell us that they like to enjoy these experiences as a team, not as separate entities, so listen to them. Here's my contact information, and I'm happy to talk afterwards if anyone has any questions.